I'm glad so many made it back after the lunch break. Hope you had a good lunch. Hope the blood is coming back to the brain and you can take in some information. Really glad to be here, to have you here as well. I want to talk to you today about testing business ideas. So what happens really before you build? Because our brains are very focused on, I have a great idea, let's just build it and see what happens. Why me? A quick introduction. You can find me on LinkedIn, so you can read all of that later. But I myself founded back in the UK. So I have, well, I guess the classic startup background, but then also switched sides and started to support startups. So I also went kind of the freelancer route, supporting other startups, doing a lot of coaching, mentoring, helping them really get off the ground and be it more the freelancer path or also the classic startup path with investments or even small businesses, have worked with them to turn ideas really into validated business cases as well. And that's what it's all about today. And of course, if you have any questions after, we can get to those. So that's where we usually start. Most of us start at, I know how it works. We have experience in an industry, we studied something, we are maybe researchers, we're tech people, we know how things work. And that's why we believe, okay, we can easily and quickly build something. But that is a mindset that doesn't leave too much space for innovation, ideation, and it leaves a lot of space for untested assumptions. I could be, just because I have a problem that I'm trying to solve, completely wrong and think that you and you and you also have this problem. But I might be wrong. So that's where the testing comes in at this stage. Because in the end, this wondering, so kind of, this child mindset, you probably heard of that, going back to this, I wonder if I'm right about something, I wonder if this works, let's explore, that is what is inviting success. I don't want to go into this, you probably heard about design thinking, but that's basically based on this methodology as well, that most people start here with ideas. You see that's already more than half where the process is. So you start, great idea, let's build it. Okay, I have an idea for a consulting business, or I'm a software developer, a software agency that I want to run as a freelancer. I just start there, But you leave out the problem space, understanding actually what your solution solves. Because in the end, of course, you can build anything. You can build beautiful, perfect products, offers, services. But if they don't match a problem, unless you're the most greatest salesperson ever, you probably won't get it to the people. And you won't sell it, at least not long term. So if you want to set yourself up for sustainable long-term success, you want to make sure that you're solving a problem with the solution that you're building. So what I like to show is that you start here in the line of assumptions. Any business, no matter if I'm a cybersecurity expert and I build a cybersecurity business, I'm still starting here in the line of assumptions. Because I will have assumptions about my business model, my product, the problem that I'm trying to solve, the people that I'm trying to solve it for. So in the end, what you want your journey to look like is not a straight line, because there's so many unknowns, and things that you have to discover as part of the process. So ideally, the process starts with many questions that you step by step start to validate, test, and then move forward with confidence. Because also at this point, you probably have like 500 other lines, directions you could go in. How do you choose? You can choose randomly, of course, you can choose based on your gut, but you want to choose based on at least some validation in the market, so you're more likely to succeed. I want to go, because we don't have much time, I want to go through 3 core elements of testing your business idea. And one of the first ones is this element of mapping your assumptions. Where do you start? What is your starting point? What are your beliefs at this starting point? And I like to cluster them in 3 elements. The first one, and I believe the most important one, is your customer segment, your target audience. Who do you want to help with what kind of problem? There are services like, I could do business consulting, coaching, for anyone wanting to do business, that could range from somebody after an executive career wanting to go into the startup world, set up their own business. But that's a very different person from maybe a student who says, look, I'll try it right away. I now have a bit of time, a bit of savings. I can just give it a try, and I'm very happy to take the risk. You know, they have very different problems, very different lives, very different budgets, of course. So you have to understand who you help with what problem and how you're going to solve that. So I think if you take one thing away from this talk to your customers, understand what they need, what their specific problem is, and by customers, it's never everybody. If on your presentation, on your deck, in your sales pitches you say, this solution helps everybody, I don't believe you, because it's not going to work. There's no solution out there that is for everybody. Well, sorry, I jumped ahead. The second part is assumptions about your offer and your value proposition. So that's things we like to start with usually. Okay, I think if I build this kind of algorithm to help me, if I optimize this kind of process, I can save these costs, I can provide this kind of value. So you want to understand what value you're building. And ideally go back, double check with the first ones, does this fit with this audience? Because sometimes we also, okay, we have an audience in mind, a problem to solve, then we come up with funny, great, awesome features, but in the end, there's a disconnect. So always double check between those two. And the third one are assumptions about your business model. A business model, maybe to just remind you if you're not dealing with that too often, is not a revenue model. It's not just how you make money. A business model is really how you create, deliver, and capture value. So that's also about how you deliver it. So what are your channels, for example? That is one of the most common things that I see experts in a certain field. They have maybe a perfect defined target group, they have a great product service, but they don't get it to people because they don't know how and they never tested how. So you spend a lot of time building, developing, but in the end, you don't reach those people that you're building for because you didn't understand or didn't test and validate, is this the right path? Should I get them through LinkedIn? Should I cold call them? Should I build an email list through a blog? So what is the right channel? And those are also things you want to test while you start, because those are very small, tiny steps you can take from the beginning. So, when you have assumptions, and my recommendation is really, you know, if you're visual, choose a whiteboard, otherwise type like bullet points, okay, I believe that, I believe that, I believe this is my target group, I believe this is the way I make money. Write all of them in a big, massive list. And from there, we want to prioritize and turn those into testable hypotheses. Sounds a bit scientific now, no worries, it's not that bad. The first step is to prioritize, because you will have a lot of assumptions. You know, you will have a lot of beliefs about your market, your audience, your product. You have to start somewhere. You cannot test everything, you don't have the resources, probably you're on your own, you don't have the money to spend to, you know, run A/B tests and campaigns and whatever, so you have to be selective. And I like 2 questions to guide me in this process. Number 1 is, which assumption has to be true for my business to work? So in the end, you can ask yourself, okay, let's say I have an assumption about my pricing. I say it's a subscription model, 20 euros a month. What if I'm wrong about this? Well, if I'm completely off, and it's instead of 20, 0, or instead of maybe I have an assumption of 5,000, and it's 50 instead, that's a massive gap. But if I'm wrong, 20, 15, 22, you know, there can be a range. So I'm like, okay, I have a rough range that I'm aware of, I don't need to test it right now. But one core element is the problem, of course, that you want to understand. Sorry, my throat is really warm and sticking here. Okay. So, you choose which assumption has to be true, and if it's not true, if you're wrong about it, what happens? And the second part, how much evidence do you have for this? Do you have a guess? Is there some market research and secondary data but still supporting you in understanding your market? Have you talked to maybe colleagues that work in the same field, that the audience already, you get a rough idea, this is a good direction to go in. So what you come up with in the end, if you cluster your assumptions, you say, okay, this one is critical. If this one is not true, if I'm completely off with what I'm believing here, this is one that goes in the yellow field. And also, where do I lack evidence? Where do I not have any touch points in the industry? Say I want to help lawyers, I want to build software for lawyers, or marketing channels, or marketing campaigns for lawyers. If I never talk to a lawyer, you know, there are some assumptions that really should go in there for you to understand that industry. And one step further, again, my recommendation, put a timer, you know, 15, 20 minutes. Don't lose time overthinking and getting stuck in an analysis, but try to build hypotheses. Because I can say, I believe that law firms have a certain problem because they're not digitized enough and they don't have a good marketing outreach, let's say, to their customers. So I want to help them. Can I test it? I can talk to, let's say, you're all lawyers, I talk to all of you. Do we know in the end, you know, that your marketing channels are not working, or are they working, you know? They're very vague. It was a very vague question I probably posed, and I will get unclear answers. So what you want to do is have hypotheses. So think of it scientific in that sense. You want to make sure that your hypotheses, so your assumptions, you turn into testable hypotheses. That means that you can basically say, I was wrong or I was right. So you validate it, yes, I was wrong about this, I was right about this, or I was wrong about this. You want them to be precise. You want to know exactly what success looks like. Because if you just ask random questions, you get a feeling maybe, and then you make decisions based on your gut feeling again. So you want to clearly know if, for example, certain pricing, if I'm right about a certain pricing, I can work with the business model, I can break even, I can have a good margin, then I know this is the success I need. And discrete. You know, you want to make sure that you test one thing at a time. If I test, okay, I think that those lawyers in this example, they like to create a marketing campaign via these channels to reach these results, and then also do this and that. You know, it gets vague again. You don't understand, you get answers here and there, and you say in the end, wow, they're all ready to pay 5,000 for my service, but in the end they all understood something different. Because one thought, okay, this is the kind of value you provide, the other one thought something different, so you have to be very discreet when you test those things. I want to give you an example that I had in a project I did. The project was basically about education, mainly motor skills as well for children at home. And that is very difficult because, you know, you have therapists maybe, you have doctors, but it's very difficult because if nothing happens at home, you know, those kids don't develop those skills. And the pain point we identified, very rough, is that parents don't know what to play with their kids at home. You know, now if I go out there, and you're a parent, and you're a parent, and you're a parent, maybe your kid is 15, your kid is 3, your kid is just born. So very different. What kind of game ideas? You tell me about the games they find on the tablet. You think about games you invent to play in the forest. You know, it's very broad. So if we turn this into this is a different example. So let's go back to this. I'll just tell you the hypothesis. So first of all, we define, we want to be very clear on the success metrics. We say parents of children aged 3 to 6. So very clear target audience, their life looks different, their priorities about the children as well are different. They don't know what to play with their kids at home, so that's very vague. So what we said is they cannot come up with daily game ideas that are developmentally friendly. We had to define a bit more, so what does developmentally friendly actually mean? So there were more criteria. But you see, I can already say, okay, maybe I cannot talk to you and not to you, but I can talk to you because your kid falls in the age group. I can ask, okay, if you sit down, what does developmentally friendly mean to you? You know, I really get down to the point of what I want to test. We can look at this example real quick. So here we see small business owners don't have the time to create consistent branded content for social media. Again, very, very broad social media. You know, there's a lot of social media these days. So if we go in, we can say owners of small service-based businesses, even define it further. They want to post 2 to 3 times per week on social media, but they struggle to create visually branded content because they lack the time and design skills. So now I can go in and say, for example, focus on those 2 elements, they lack time and design skills, but then maybe you're of my audience and you tell me 5 other things. You know, I like this, I like that, I cannot do this because of X, Y, Z. And then I realized, okay, I was maybe right about the time. You don't have the time, but you're a great designer. And I figured out that everywhere. So I won't offer a product, I will offer a product that helps with the timing, you know, that helps to be more efficient, but not necessarily one that focuses on the design aspect, because that's something I tested and validated. Okay, here comes the fun part. The fun part is actually the experiments. I like to structure it in 2 experiments. One is discovery experiments, and the other ones are validation experiments. In the end, you don't have to make a differentiation. It doesn't matter. I'll show you a few examples now. Very good book. If you want to really look into more of these experiments, I can really recommend this book, and that's where also these examples are from. But you can go from customer interviews, for example, surveys. You can do landing pages, track, okay, how many people visit this, how many people leave their email addresses. You know, you can do a lot of different experiments if you build a physical product. You can 3D print by now, you can do a paper product. You can create a storyboard, drawing like a little comic that this is what happens, show it to somebody. You can have a data sheet if it's a complex technology or service or process, for example, that you help people with. You draw it, you print and explain a video. You know, there are endless ways that you can test, and you really should get creative in doing so. Here's some validation experiments as well. I think 2 I want to highlight here is 1. The first one actually that I believe everybody should do, no matter your business, no matter your background, is customer interviews. And that's not a, okay, 20 questions, questionnaire, sitting down for an hour, structured interview. That's being really interested in, hey, you're my audience, I want to talk to you, you know, I want to find out what is your pain point, what are your challenges. And then later on going back and ticking off, okay, I was right about that for this person, this hypothesis is validated. I now know, okay, I'm on the right path. This is not quantitative data as well. I want to remind you, this is not a quantitative survey, this is qualitative data. So in the end, you will not make, you know, mathematical decisions, this is the way or that is the way, but you get some validation. And I often get the question, okay, how much validation, you know, when is it enough? It's there to support your confidence in the end. Am I confident enough now to put basically my time, my money, which you as a freelancer, solopreneur, entrepreneur, put in there, that's what you give basically to this business. Am I confident enough now that I bet on the right horse? That's what this is supposed to help you. Another one I wanted to highlight, it's called Wizard of Oz, or also Concierge. Basically, it's manually delivering your service or even your product. So there's a lot of AI out there right now. Of course, I can sit down, isolate myself for a few months, build an AI model, and then bring it to customers. But I can also say, you know, you send this data set, you upload it to this kind of website, and then tomorrow you will get your analysis. And in the end, well, you spend a night looking through the data, making the analysis that the AI should be doing. High effort, but very low cost, and you're not losing anything. You know, you lose a night, a day, a few days, a few weeks, but you don't build something that in the end won't create the value that people expect. So always think about talking to your customers and delivering whatever you're doing manually. You know, it's high effort, but you can really get good feedback on what you're trying to deliver. Based on time, well, here's just an example. You probably all know Ring. They're doing these door cameras. And just to show you that where they started, for example, I mean, here's where they are now. They do, of course, product tests, A/B testing, all of that. But where they started was a mashup. A mashup is basically taking things that are available. They bought a camera off the shelf. They didn't develop their own camera. They used some software tools, integrate them. So that is also one recommendation. See what's out there, stitch it to get it. Now it's more easier than ever. So just build something ugly, quickly, and get it in front of people. You know, probably there were like 90% of perfectionists here. This is not pretty enough. The design is not right. The branding is not right. And if you're branding or marketing expert, sorry for me to say that, but you still have to get stuff in front of the right people, the people that you want to be your customers, early to get the feedback. So, summing up before we come to questions, really the main guidelines: never skip talking to customers. It's one of the hardest things. Like, even if I work with people, you know, if I don't literally sit them in front of somebody and say talk to each other, it's hard because we are afraid of getting the wrong feedback. Maybe it's uncomfortable, you don't have anything to show yet, but you know, give it a try, you will learn so much. Start learning quick. As I said, nothing of this has to be beautiful and pretty, unless I guess you want to sell yourself as a designer, make it somehow pretty. And one core as well, don't stop after the experiments. So a lot of people say, okay, great. I did like 10, 15 interviews, very qualitative but very deep interviews, and get some ideas now. And then it's about, okay, what feature to build first? And you're like, oh, this is my favorite feature. I'll start there. So take into consideration, look back at the feedback, look back at your notes, and really make decisions based on what you tested. So in the end, there are 3 core options. I would say persevere. If you're not really sure yet, and it's a core critical assumption, keep testing it, you know, try another test. Maybe instead of interviews, you try a larger scale survey, or you build a landing page, whatever it is, try more and test again. Pivot. If you're really wrong about a core assumption, you know, change the direction of it. Try to go to a different niche, a different target audience, try to change something in your product. And kill stuff, you know. We all have a lot of crazy ideas, a lot of fantastic things we want to do, build, offer. Sometimes it's okay to kill stuff, and it's the hardest. I've killed a whole company after 4 years. It's tough, but sometimes you just gotta kill stuff to move on and continue the cycle, because in the end you still got the learning from it. It's never for nothing. So make sure to do that. Okay, that's from my end. Questions?